Food is fuel for your body, your mind, and definitely your sport. But let's face it, nutrition is confusing, and the expectations on girls and women to be thin and have a six-pack are exhausting. If you've ever been frustrated with your body, confused about nutrition, obsessed with eating healthy, or guilty when you don't, underate, overate, or overtrained, and overwhelmed with all the pressure, then this podcast is for you. Nutrition can be easy, you can take control of it, but it might start with letting go of control by asking for help and making a change. I'm Lindsay Elizabeth Cortez, sports dietitian and owner of Rise Up Nutrition, where I empower female athletes to overcome nutrition concerns and perform at their highest level, to stop being confused by all the mixed or harmful messages, and finally have confidence in your body as a fierce, fit, and fueled female athlete. Hello fans, it's Lindsay Elizabeth Cortez, registered sports dietitian and your host of the podcast. Quick reminder, please head to femaleathletenutritionpodcast.com for all the things, including to listen to recent episodes, to apply to get on the show, to learn more about potential services that I'm offering, to download guides on healing from RED-S, relative energy deficiency in sport, to subscribe to our email list, which I would strongly encourage you to do that. And the link is in the show notes as well, because I've got some exciting things that are going to be offered in 2025. So if you subscribe to our email list, then you'll be sure to be notified, even if you do happen to miss an episode, right, of listening to the podcast. So having the things in writing is always helpful too. So subscribe to our email list. And you can also, on the website, femaleathletenutritionpodcast.com, you can offer a financial contribution to help support the show, in which we would be so appreciative. We would also be very appreciative of a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you listen, and a great review to help spread this mission and get more listeners like you who can benefit from this type of information. Let's get to today's episode because it's a long one. And this is actually somebody that her and I have a little bit of a personal connection and story as to how we know each other. And we're going to dive into that in the episode. This is a guest, Jennifer St. Jean. Jenn is a master's middle distance runner who focuses primarily on the mile. Jenn started running at the age of 12 and joined her middle school cross-country team with only 3 meets left in the season. She went on to set a number of high school records for cross-country, indoor and outdoor track, and finished out high school with all New England status. She was then a walk-on at the University of Massachusetts Amherst track and cross-country teams under head coach Julie Lafreniere. Her team won many A10 championships, set a university record in the 4x800, and Jenn was conference champion in several events. It was a great foundation for the next step in her running career when she ran for an Olympic development team under head coach Bob Savine. Her distance medley relay team came in second place at the USA Track and Field Indoor Nationals, and she ran her PRs of 2:08 in the 800 meters and 4:19 in the 1500 meters. It was the pinnacle of her running career. But then she took a break from racing for many years in order to focus on her personal life and start a family. She now has 2 daughters. And running was always a part of who she was, even when not racing. She would still enjoy going out for daily runs to help with her physical and mental well-being. Well, in the spring of 2013, she returned to regular running routine and really wanted to claim her body back after a rough physical road, including a medical diagnosis of Lyme disease, which we talk about in this episode. But in April of 2016, she decided to really get after her running goals more seriously and return to competitive racing. She currently trains with an elite group of runners under head coach Devin Martin and the Central Park Track Club. Since becoming a master's runner, she has run a 4:54 mile and 4:37 for 1500 meters. Jenn's goal is to run faster than she did when she was 23 years old. Her times are getting close. Jenn believes that even if she comes up short, it is a worthy goal. She uses the hashtag #FasterAsAMaster to motivate herself and others that you can continue to train, be competitive, and potentially be faster even as a master's athlete compared to your younger self. Jenn, thank you so much for being willing to chat with me finally. I've wanted you as a guest for a while now, so thanks for coming on.
Yeah, of course.
So for our listeners too, if they didn't pick up on this in reading your bio, you went and ran track and field at the University of Massachusetts Amherst, which is where I did as well. So we were different years. We weren't on the same team together, but that's one way that you and I actually connected through social media is when we realized that we were both UMass alum, track and field alums, and were coached under the same head coach, Julie Lafreniere.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun finding that little fun fact.
Yeah, and I don't even know how we started, following each other otherwise, but we just kind of found each other through the internet and then made that relationship. So that was really awesome. I love hearing, reading off in your bio your high school and college track career, and I would just love to hear from you what drew you to it in high school when you started joining races and finding out that you were pretty good at it. Where do you think that passion came from for you?
I was always athletic kid. I couldn't really do organized sports because we didn't have the finances for it growing up. So but I would always like go out in the backyard and I would play pickup soccer games, flag football, anything that was sort of active and moving around, hiking in the woods, riding bikes with my brothers, just very, very active as a child. And then in the eighth grade, I remember hearing in middle school, like over the loudspeaker, they would do like cross country announcements, and I had no idea what that was. I kind of knew what some of the other sports were, but I legit didn't know what cross country was.
Yeah, most people
So a
don't.
friend of mine, right? A friend of mine said, well, we had a half day and she said, well, I'm going back to school to go to cross country practice. And I was like, what is this cross country practice? And she said, well, we just go and we run. And I was like, where? And she's like, just around. And I was like, why are you doing this? And she's like, well, it's fun and I enjoy it. And I was like, okay, well, can I come with you? And she's like, sure. So I went with her to practice that day. I'm running with her and the coach. And the coaches said, how do you feel? I said, I feel pretty good. And he's like, well, do you see that girl up ahead? Do you think you could try and catch up to her? And I was like, sure, no problem. And so like methodically, I just like slowly catch up to the girl, finish the run with the girl.
Yeah.
The coach and my friend come back to the middle school and they're like, how do you feel? I said, I felt fine. He said, okay, well, that's our best runner on the team. I think you should join cross country. And I was like, well, my mom said I can't really do organized sports. And he's like, well, I actually know your mom from Cub Scouts. I'll have a talk with her. So my mom comes to pick me up from school and he turns to her and says, Linda, I think you need to let her run cross country because this is going to be her ticket to college. I can tell you this kid is very gifted. It just comes so easy to her. So she's like, well, I don't really have the money for that. And he said, well, can you just get her a good pair of running shoes? And that's all she needs. Really doesn't need anything else. And my mom's like, yeah, okay, I can do that. And so I got some running shoes and I've literally been running ever since.
Thank you for sharing that story because I'm a big fan of all sports. And I do love the idea, though, that running cross country, specifically in track and field, is accessible
Yeah.
to people who, it's things like hockey, it's like
Yeah.
gymnastics. Like, man, you got to start that at 6 years old. You got to be a part of a club. It takes a lot of money. It's not something that you can always just pick up at age 14. And yet, track and field and running, you really can. And
Yes.
yes, you might need to invest in a pair of running shoes, but for the most part, that's it.
Yeah.
For the most part, we can get fancy and we can certainly spend a lot of money on it. But yeah, when I was in high school, I wore old t-shirts and running shoes. And, I love that it's accessible to people and kids. Like you said, you were active, but not necessarily in organized sports. And my dad's a high school cross country coach and he does that too. He kind of finds the kids that maybe aren't already participating in sport. And it's like, hey, join the team. Because you don't even have to try out. That's another fun thing. Usually, most cross country and track and field teams, it's like if you want to be on the team, you can be on the team.
Yep.
And it gives people an opportunity. And I just think that's something unique about track and field and cross country at the high school level specifically. So thank you for sharing that was part of your story too. And I'm so glad you had a coach that like encouraged your mom to support you in it, because look at all the pathways that it's opened up for you in your life and how it shaped your life.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I'm a
Yeah.
big believer in that. And even when, my kids are older now, but when their friends come over and, we'll just be talking and, maybe they don't play a sport or something. And I'm like, well, have you ever thought about throwing the javelin? And they're like, what?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I mean, you literally just pick up a spear and throw it across the field. Like,
How fun.
have fun, right? And just trying to get other people to think about track and field as not just running, right? Which not
Yes,
everybody enjoys running, but there's so
that's
many
true.
other events that you can participate in that don't involve a large volume of running.
Yes. Yep. Another huge point. And yeah, I love that too. I had a lot of friends in high school that did the throwing events because they didn't like running, but they still got to be a part of a team.
Yeah.
And again, you don't have to own a javelin.
Nope.
You don't have to buy that equipment if money or accessibility is a concern. It's, those things, there's a sand pit, go jump in it.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And oh my gosh, sorry, but here we are, track and field fans here. It's like it's one sport, but it's not. There's like 17 different sports within one, right?
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
all the different events. So, and now when you went on to UMass, you were a walk on, correct?
Yeah. So, I mean, I had like good success in high school. I was, within our division, our league, our state class meets. I always performed really well. At the all state meet, I was good, but I wasn't the shining star, right? And then one time in in high school, during indoor track, I was all New England, which that was kind of about as far as you could go back in the 90s. I don't know that they had a full blown national championship. They might have had like AAU or some other, sister organization, but there was no way my mother was flying me to Florida for nationals. Like that was never going to
Yeah.
happen. So New England's was about as far as I could go. So yeah, I mean, trying to get into a Division 1 university, I definitely wasn't a top recruit. Right. So I had reached out to 3 universities because again, college applications are expensive. And so I kind of
Mhm.
talked to my guidance counselor and I was like, okay, well, what are the 3 Division 1 schools that I could apply to and potentially run at? And my mom's like, okay, well, there's a cap on how far you can go. So I grew up in Central Mass, and UMass, UNH, and UConn were exactly an hour and 30 minutes from my house. Like, how weird is that, though, that each one
Yeah,
of them was
all three of us
exactly an hour and 30 minutes from my house? That was as far as I could go. And that's
in
where,
all different directions,
right.
north, west, and south. Yeah.
So I applied to all three, got into all three, and because I was in state, the financial aid package for UMass was the most attractive. And the UNH coach didn't kind of pay attention to me, and the UConn coach never responded. So, but UMass was the first school that I visited with my actual high school coach and his daughter. We went out there and visited together. And I loved the coach. I was like, this is fantastic. A female coach. This is amazing. So I
Yeah.
think all of that kind of, was on my mind as to what school I would probably be happiest at. And so when I mentioned to Julie that I wanted to go there, she said, okay, well, you can walk on. I have room for you and like your times are good enough, but I can't recruit you. And so like back then with like all these like changes in the NCAA that are happening every single day, it was very different back then. There were not actually because of Title IX, there generally were more spots available on the girls' teams because they weren't maxed out at that point in time, right?
Right.
So anyway, but it was also about being able to keep up with the other athletes
Hmm.
and not falling behind either. So yeah, so I earned a walk-on spot. And within the first couple of weeks, there were, I think, 3 other mid-distance runners that were freshmen. And so there were just 4 of us total on the distance side. There were plenty more on the track and field side, but on the distance side, there were only like 3 or 4 of us. And the other girls decided that the amount of work that it took to be on the cross country team and what they were studying at UMass wasn't a good balance for them. And they decided to leave cross country and just focus on school. So
Mm.
I was a walk on and I was the only one that stayed.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
So kudos to Julie for giving me a spot for sure.
Spot.
Yeah.
Exactly. And, my story is different than yours, but I'm just want to say thanks to UMass because I was technically a walk-on as well. I was having conversations senior year with the assistant coach at UMass at the time. And it was like, well, we can't offer you a scholarship. We don't have spots for that, but like we have a spot for you and we think we can train you. We think that you're deserving of this spot. And just the ability for teams to give that opportunity is so helpful. And I don't know how much things have changed. It seems to me like it's a lot harder to get on a college athletic team
Yeah,
these days than it was
I agree.
back then. But I hope that coaches listening just still hear the value of giving somebody that opportunity. And yeah, I did it for all 4 years and ended up being captain senior year.
Yeah,
Even though I wasn't a scholarship athlete, there was something I provided to the team that was helpful beyond just performance too. So,
yeah.
and yeah, like you said too, you were the only one that stayed. So that's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
And so you already alluded to the fact that you thought it was cool to have a female head coach. And I've got to be honest too, I don't even know when I was in high school if I even thought of that. I did when I was in gymnastics as a kid athlete in club sports, I had both a male and female coach. And then in high school gymnastics, I had a female coach. And then in track and field, male coaches. So I don't know that like I had this view in my mind that like there's no female coaches anywhere because at least in my experience with gymnastics, I had female coaches. So when I went to UMass and had a female head coach, that to me seemed normal. But again, something that I've kind of learned in hindsight and as I continue to profession in athletics, it's like, oh, there's very few women coaches. If there are, they're very often assistant coaches. It's very rare to have a female head coach, even of a female team. And so it's interesting, like, that you picked up on that, like, oh, cool to have a female coach. And how do you think, like, do you feel that shaped your career? Were there positives, negatives? Like, did you feel at that time in your life? I know you got views about it now, but at that time in your life, like, do you feel that was impactful?
I think there was a lot like you. I mean, in high school, I didn't actually make the connection that the female coach had supported me in a way that the male coaches maybe didn't. And that's why I performed so well that year in high school. But, and again, I mean, I was excited to have a female coach in college, but I guess I didn't think that it was, typical or atypical that there were or weren't
Yeah.
until I started looking around at some of these big meets and I realized that I'm probably one of, the only teams or on one of the only teams that had a female coach at the time. And I don't, I don't know. I mean, I've had a lot of male coaches and they were fantastic. And I think for that, I was very fortunate because I don't think that's always the case. But I think that there's a lot that female coaches can sort of bring to the table as long as they are using their position in sort of a manner of being that voice, the sharing of information that is necessary to really help female athletes thrive. So if they're just a
Right.
coach and they're not sharing any of this wisdom of what they've gone through in their life as an athlete, then it's not really changing the dynamics very much.
Right. Your sex alone is not what's going to dictate whether or not you're a good coach, but it is something that if they're willing to share their lived experiences, being a female, being an athlete, that might be helpful or just their comfort level. Again, men might be comfortable talking about female specific needs or they might not be. But maybe a female coach might, if they're willing, might be more comfortable talking about certain things. And I mean, going back to college, because that's just such a what's the word? Just a fun, challenging, confusing, difficult, exciting time in somebody's life. Like, I know for me as an athlete, some of the things that I struggled with most was like personal relationships,
Yeah.
both friendship and like intimate ones that caused anxiety, stress with school, just like more like things like that actually made an impact on my performance. And at the time, I wasn't comfortable talking to a coach about that. But if I had a coach that maybe did make me feel comfortable talking about more like the social aspects, because that affected me as a female athlete. Social issues affected my performance.
Mm-hmm.
And I just see that, like, again, maybe this is all hypothetical, maybe a female coach would be more willing to talk about those things
Yeah.
if they're open to it and could help sort through some of those stuff.
So I remember, especially during cross country season, we took the UMass vans quite a bit.
Yeah.
And so Julie would be driving the vans, and we would just start like bombarding her with questions about relationships, about what it was like to be an athlete, in the 70s. And so like it was just like nonstop firing of questions. So I feel like because we were able to have that relationship with her, it really opened up our eyes in just the ways of growing up and becoming women. So, and having compassion for each other and compassion for what each of us is going through. And yeah, it was amazing. I mean, the women I was on the team with, just those friendships, those relationships, I don't know. I don't know how to describe it. It was amazing.
It's such a special time. Yeah.
Yeah.
So kind of fast forwarding now too, you've been a coach yourself
Yeah.
in the past and hopefully again in the future. And like, how now being in that position yourself of being a coach, like, how important do you think it is to have more female representation in order to coach other female or male athletes?
Yeah. Well, I'll start off with, so my first introductory, like I've been private coaching for a long time. So like individual athletes that, they're looking for some assistance, some hands-on guidance. They're frustrated, maybe they're injured, maybe it's a cycle that they just can't get out of. And so I try to help them through those difficult times and give them one-on-one coaching. I've been doing that for a really long time, since my late 30s, really. So formal coaching, like for teens, started for me during the pandemic when the world kind of shut down and my husband started working from home. And I was like, oh, brilliant. Like I can actually like get out and do this coaching thing. So I went through USATF school, level 1, level 2, and was hired by Greenwich High School coaching boys cross country, indoor and outdoor track. And again, like, despite being a female coach, at first the boys kind of thought like, oh, geez, this is just another mom helping out. But then as I started talking with them, running with them, which was sort of odd to them at first, like this is wild that this coach, first of all, and this female is like running with us and keeping up with us. This is crazy.
Yeah.
I was able to help them through because the head coach was coaching the varsity boys. And so I had the freshman JV boys, and they were arguably like freshmen, sophomores, and they were going through major, major growth spurts, right? And they were frustrated with like feeling tight muscles and IT band and like all of these, things are cropping up for these boys because they're literally going to be growing a foot in a year. Right.
It's crazy.
I mean, it's just wild what their bodies go through. And so I just, with like compassion, just kind of talked to them about what was actually going on and what they could actually look forward to. And when they would start to see a spark and see things change, and that they would, now start to be able to harness their power, their speed, and gave them some hope and something to look forward to rather than just being frustrated with being growing freshman boy.
Yeah.
And I don't know that other people necessarily have the time or the compassion to walk them through those phases because maybe they're not very good at the time, right? And, they're slower probably than some of the girls. And now we can sort of get into that too, which is that, when you have 8th, ninth, and 10th grade girls, their bodies have not gone through the major changes that these boys have already gone through.
Yeah.
And so then later in their junior, senior, freshman, sophomore years in college, when they're going through massive, massive changes in their body, and it's, not necessarily growing in height, but, our bodies still change and grow. And that can be frustrating because their times might plateau, or maybe they might even be slightly off, but they're not really worse runners than they were before. They're just not seeing the growth that others are seeing, right? And it can be completely frustrating for them as well. So, while I utilized my time coaching the boys and helping them the best that I could, I always wanted to still be able to be that voice to help girls through something that no one explained to me. And I didn't learn until later in life when I was studying exercise science and studying, growth and performance. And I focused on pediatric exercise science. So I really got like the
Oh,
full scope of like what are the changes that developmentally that humans go through in their life as they're growing and
yeah.
developing, and how it affects their performance, right? And so after 2 years at Greenwich, I was given an amazing opportunity to go work for Fordham University. And so I was the mid-distance coach for indoor and outdoor, and I was assistant coach for cross country. And I spent a lot of time running with the women at Fordham, and also taking time during like warm ups and dynamics to spend time with the boys and talk to them and check in with them and see how they're feeling. And, are they experiencing any, discomfort, or, you look really tired today. What's going on? Have you had blood work done? And so I really tried to like have touch points with both the boys, or the men and the women at Fordham.
Mhm.
But I feel like it was sort of groundbreaking in that, like, the first year that I was there, I sat down and had conversation with the women about how their cycle can affect their performances throughout the month and how they feel, and how to sort of embrace it. And it's not necessarily that you need to change your workouts, like, oh, it's the week before I have my cycle, therefore I'm going to like back off of my workouts because I don't feel good. But it's more of just giving your body grace, because you don't know,
Mhm.
like a race could happen, at the same time, right? So it's not that you need to necessarily change things. It's just you need to give yourself grace. Like, I'll give you an example. So, I might have a goal pace of 3 minutes, right? For a rep. I won't even say what the rep is, but the goal pace is 3 minutes, right? Because we don't need to do that to people. So,
No.
but say I show up to that workout and the first one is like 310, and you're like, are you like, why is this happening? Like I feel fine, like this is all fine. Why am I running 310 when I know that I can run 3 minutes, right? And I'm supposed to run
Right.
all of them at 3 minutes or even faster than that, and I'm only at
Mhm.
310. How am I going to shave 10 seconds off of this rep, to reach my reps the next time? And so what I've learned is that, like, sometimes I just have to show up and accept the 310s, because work's
Yeah.
work, right? Like, I'm putting in the same effort of trying to run that 3 minutes as I am, and the clock is saying 310. But,
Yeah.
but it's not that, because I'm not running 310 because I'm slacking off or I'm working any less hard. And if I try to
Mhm.
run 3 minutes, I'm actually working harder than I need to, right? And
Mhm.
so that would be like me being given a goal pace of 310 and going out and running them all at 250. Like, well, that doesn't make
Right.
sense.
You're putting in
Now
that
you've
effort.
just, right? Now you've just put in a 90% effort when you were only supposed to give me 80, right?
Yeah.
But sometimes 80 is 80, right?
And I agree with you that just understanding your cycle is all that's needed. It's not
Hmm.
necessarily that we have to manipulate things or change our training or change our nutrition. It's just an understanding changes your approach and mindset of going into that workout or that performance. And I will add too, because I think, your example, we're assuming that maybe certain phases of our cycle, maybe when we are PMSing or estrogen's high, that it feels harder to perform, or muscles might not be as quick to respond, they might be more sore, and these things actually are documented in research. However, I do want people to know that when it comes to race day or game day, or hey, I've got one shot to give it my top performance, we are seeing successful performances no matter what phase of the menstrual cycle you're in. And
Exactly.
so this is a reminder that there are 1,000 different things that affect your performance. And, on race day, even if you do have high estrogen, if the temperature's perfect and you're hydrated and you've got adrenaline going, like, you can still have your best performance. But
Exactly.
sometimes we feel that in our practice because we've got to do 10 reps of something where we might feel, oh, I am 10 seconds slower, but that's okay because I know I'm still putting in the effort and the work.
Yeah.
So I just want to share that too, because I think it's what you're getting at is the knowledge is so helpful to change your mental approach and give
Yeah.
yourself more grace. And then also when it comes to doing it that one shot, that one race, or that one game, to know that there's so many things affecting performance. Your menstrual cycle is not something holding you back.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, and thank you for sharing kind of that example, and also just the importance of coaching both men and women. And it just sounds like, again, this is it doesn't matter your sex. It's really just the approach that you're taking. But because of your, who you are and your gender and how you grew up and being on a women's team, things like that have shaped you as a person to express that compassion and care about growth and development. And so those are things that you bring to the table as to who you are as a person, and your experiences with that. Exercise science, specifically during youth and pediatrics, I think is really helpful, because that it's so funny how high school and college is such this critical, important, and fun time for people to develop into the potentially the best athletes they can be. And yet it's such a challenging time on the body with growth and development,
Yeah.
that understanding it and giving grace and understanding, the boys are going through puberty most likely at this stage versus the girls maybe a little later, can really help change your mental approach, your grace, and even some training tactics to support success in the long run.
Yeah, I agree.
And kind of jumping ahead here, because there's a couple other topics I want to talk about, but just to go along the theme, I just talked about how like high school and college is when so many people see their best performances. But you decided about 10-ish years ago, you're like, I think I've got more in me. I want to see if I can be faster as a master athlete. And I just want to hear like that. Was it just this something in you that felt unfinished, or just that pursuit and love of running that you're like, I want to train for something? What made that goal of, I want to see if I can reach my PRs from when I was in my 20s as a master's athlete?
Yeah. And I'll just add, so I'm 49 and in like a couple weeks, I'll turn 50. And so this season alone, I went back to Lehigh University to the Paul Short Invitational for cross country and ran PR there faster than what I ran in college.
Wow.
So, which is great, right? And then
So cool.
just this past Sunday, I ran a half marathon PR,
Saw
a
that.
lifetime PR in the half marathon, running 1:22. So,
And you went out for a training run because, I was reading that on your social account. That was a training run for you because you don't typically prefer to compete those distances.
yeah.
How fun.
And I think based on my heart rate, like I was true to that. I think my max heart rate during that race was about 155, and my max heart rate generally is it was just improved to 175. So, it
Yeah.
was truly at about like an 80% effort for a long run, 13 miles.
Yeah.
So when I sort of declared at 39 that at 40 I would try to become faster as a master, it really was about unfinished business. So at the age of 23, I was 1 second from qualifying for the Olympic trials in the 1500. And not my coach, but, you're standing there and you're talking to your coach, and other people are saying things, and you hear them and their words impact you, right? And so they
Mhm.
just started talking about how, oh well, 23, like this is your best year. If you don't do it this year, then it's never going to happen. It's pretty much downhill from there, which we now
Mm.
know because several Olympians have gone on to run into their 30s and nearly 40s, so we know
Mhm.
that that's not true anymore. But I'd like to think, okay, well, when I was 40 making these kinds of, declarations, they were also just 30. And so maybe seeing me still, running well into my
Yeah.
40s in some way could have sparked, coaches or other people in the running community to say, oh, maybe you don't have to hang up your racing shoes, or maybe you can have
Mhm.
children and then still come back in a healthy way, so I like to think that it was just kind of like an opportunity, I don't know, to fill a bucket of goodness, and that, don't count women out just because of their age. And let's see what we actually are truly capable of, because no one's given us an opportunity to see what we're capable of. And I think
Mhm.
that's the part that I hope to continue to change. Now, arguably, saying faster as a master, my 800 and my 1500 meter times. Okay, well, I took 15 years off from competitive running, which is a lot of time to try and, gain back to get to a fitness level that I was at before. So in those two events, I have not become faster as a master. Running
Pretty
208.
darn close though.
Yeah,
But
no, but 208 and 419 are my lifetime PRs in the 800 and 1500. So that's tough to do. I won't say that I've given up hope though. So, it's sort of a motivating factor to see how close I can get. And of course, that there are
yeah,
age graded charts now. And so when you calculate what the world record is for my age group and the overall world record, I actually technically am faster as a master. My performances now
yeah,
are better than what I achieved when I was 23. But, in longer
yeah. I
distances,
love those age graded
yeah,
charts.
those longer distances.
They really validate how good you are. Yeah,
Yeah. The longer distances, though, I truly have run my lifetime PRs as a master, which is pretty typical, right? Like, there's no rush
it is.
to run a half marathon or a marathon when you're young. Like, you can give
Yeah.
yourself time without, risking injuring yourself and not being able to continue it for a long, long time.
Yeah, I think that's a great message to share as I'm seeing just with the popularity of distance running. And again, going back to maybe just accessibility of signing up for a 5K, a half marathon, a marathon. And maybe this is just the bubble I live in, but I do feel that there's a lot of interest in young girls are interested in signing up for a half marathon or a marathon. They make it a goal of theirs. And it's a wonderful goal, but there's, like you said, there's no rush because actually we have proof. We have true living proof that this is something you can do and do really, really well as you age.
Yeah.
And I think your generation is so inspiring too, because I do feel that your generation is the first to really experience high level athletics throughout the lifespan.
Yeah.
So like we said, Title IX started in the 70s, but those trailblazing female athletes, did it in high school, college, maybe a few years beyond. And then we're told, like you were,
Right.
oh, you're going to peak at 23 and then time to move on and have families.
Yes.
And I'll even say the older generations had kids even younger than we're having them now. And now women are, things are shifting that way. I don't have to have kids as young if I don't want to, or have them at all if I don't want to, or I can have kids and I can come back and I can still be an athlete and I can still chase these goals. And so I personally just want to say, Jen, too, like, I love your faster as a master hashtag and goal. And like you said, those 800, 1500, it's hard, but you're not giving up because just setting the goal gets you closer and closer to it. We'll see if you reach it and you've achieved so much in the pursuit of it. And like, for me, I feel like in my life, I suppose similar to yours, in that I did want to have family and I did want to have kids, but it's one of those things of like, man, I'm not in a place to be competitive right now. And when will I be? It might be another 10 years. And then how old am I going to be? And people like you help me realize if I want to be competitive 10 years from now, I can be.
Mm-hmm.
And that is something to look forward to, that I don't have to feel like athletics is part of my past.
Yeah.
It can also still be part of my future, which is
Absolutely.
really helpful
Yeah.
to somebody in my position right now.
In taking that 15-year pause too, like people are like, oh, well, did you run during that time? I'm like, yeah, of course I ran during that time, right? Like, did I breathe? Like, of course I ran, and so like, but I mean, I look back and I cherish some of those really slow double jogging stroller days when, my little ones were like, Mommy, run faster, and they just wanted to feel the wind in their hair of me, like
Yeah.
pushing them and, or controlling, the music and what was playing and like, being a DJ on my run and, so like,
Yeah.
but those are fun times too, right? And I don't regret having any of those or taking that necessary time for my body to heal, for, those days when they were little and, you're on your feet all day long, chasing after them. And
Mhm.
that is just as rewarding and as exhausting, right? Like it's not really a
Mhm.
break. It's just, you're just changing the activity, right?
Oh, yeah. There was a slogan from a guest we had a few years ago who has a little hashtag that says, every mom is an athlete, just because motherhood in and of itself is an athletic feat. And when you're the
It's
little
true.
ones.
And one of the things that I tell, moms when I'm private coaching them is not to forget to count their mom miles, right? So like if you
Yeah.
have like counting your steps, and not that I count my steps, but like if you're looking back on it, you're like, oh man, like why are my legs so tired today? And you look back and it's like, oh, I did laundry yesterday. So that means I climbed the stairs like 50 times,
Right. Yeah.
right? And I probably traveled 6 miles in my house. Like,
Hmm.
no, it's not like high intensity activity, but it's still time on your feet, right?
Yeah. Yeah. My boys, every time I'm carrying one of them up the stairs, the other one also demands to be carried up. Like they can both walk up the stairs, but if I'm carrying one, the other one needs to be carried. So in the end, I carry 70 pounds up and down the stairs at
Right,
one time, one boy in each arm. And it's like,
right. That's
that's hard.
CrossFit. That's CrossFit, man.
It is. It's hard. I do every morning specifically, bringing them down out of their beds to go down for breakfast. And then again, like it happens multiple times a day.
Yeah,
Sometimes I'm like, no, you need to walk now. You're old enough. But it's cute that they want to be held. So
yeah, yeah, exactly.
mom miles. I
Mile
like that. I
miles.
like that a lot.
Hmm.
Yeah. Well, I do this a lot on my podcast where I'm just so interested in your athletic journey that I like forget to talk about nutrition. But you have nutrition in your journey as an athlete, as a mom as well. That is another huge reason I wanted you to be on this show. So first, I know that you were diagnosed with lupus quite a few years back.
Lyme, actually.
And I admitted to you
Lyme.
how many?
Lyme.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
Lyme. Yes, thank you for that correction.
No problem.
The L words confused me. Okay. So you were diagnosed with Lyme disease a few years back, and I admitted to you this is something I know very little about. And I would love if you're willing to share just what were some symptoms, how it affected your health, how you got diagnosed, and how this impacts nutrition, running, and just health in general.
So, when I first started feeling really fatigued, I went to the doctor and I said, I'm a runner. I do spend some time in the woods. I'd really like to be tested for Lyme disease. Also, if you want to see if I have mono or like
Yeah.
anemia, like any of these things, like that would be great. And he's like, yeah, sure. So he did full blood workup and he's like, yeah, no Lyme. And I was like, huh. Interesting. I'm like, but I'm like really, really tired. And he's like, well, you're a mom. Of course you're really tired. I was like, no. I don't think you understand. Like, it's not just like mom tired. Like I'll sit down on the couch to watch TV with the kids and like, I'll just immediately fall asleep, like in the middle of the
Yeah.
day. Like this is not normal tired.
Yeah.
So I didn't really get anywhere there. And, I had lots of other like health symptoms going on, skin related and like things just brain fog, things were not really making sense for me. And so, of
Yeah.
course, you go onto Google and you start plugging in like what your symptoms are. And every single time it would come back Lyme. And I'm like, this is just really strange. So I ended up seeking out alternative medicine. I went to see a naturopath and I really liked her because she was very science approach. She also studied exercise science and she just basically used her exercise science background and her nutrition or love of nutrition and combined the two and became a naturopath. So how can I heal people with food, right? Like she wasn't
Yeah.
plugging a ton of supplements or things like that. I mean, supplements are definitely a part of it, but she was also just plugging like eat butter. Like it's okay, like
Yeah.
eating
Yeah.
alternative stuff might not be good for you, you know. So she just had a very healthy way of like looking at things. What she also had was she had access to two different Lyme laboratories. So one of them is called I Spot Lyme, and the other one was, I think it was like iGenix out in California. And what's interesting is that both of these laboratories they track Lyme disease across the world, right?
Wow.
And so, and also they look for like other markers and other bacteria that ticks carry. And they can use that information to sort of figure out what level of Lyme you might have. Now, what's interesting about Lyme that I learned is that like when you first are bit by a tick, like you have it in your blood, right? So like if you know that you got bit by a tick, antibiotics can actually be very beneficial to you not getting Lyme disease, right? But what
Mm,
if you got bit by a tick in college and yeah, you felt tired, but you were in college. And so you just thought you were tired because you were a college student and it goes untreated.
right.
So then what happens to you when you're living with chronic Lyme disease and you don't discover it until you're 36 years old, right? I mean, that's a
Right.
long time to be living with it. That's, almost 20 years. And you don't just get rid of it, like the body doesn't rid of it. So the Lyme itself has like these long tails called like spirochetes, I think is what it's called. And what it does
Mm,
is that it lodges itself into like muscle tissue and organ
mm.
tissue and it just goes to sleep. And then you might have something stressful happen in your life, which triggers it to awaken, which is like the worst
Oh,
possible
wait.
time, right? Like you're already,
Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
already under
Yeah.
stress.
Very stressful time in life. Let me have
Like,
a
let,
diagnosis.
let me make you sleepy because that's going to help your situation. So while I was having sort of, I guess, an episode, if you will, she had me do a blood test and it came back that like the amount was literally one, I don't know what the rating of it is, but one less than what would trigger on like a regular blood test to say that you had Lyme.
So that's why your initial doctor's visit said, oh, you don't have it. But
Exactly. But I also had
yeah.
the co-bacterias with it, which are doing a number
Mhm.
on my stomach and gut.
Yeah.
So between the two of those, we were able to sort of pinpoint why I was having all these digestive issues and feeling so tired. So so what I ended up doing, so some of the things that I know about Lyme is that like iron and carbs sort of fuel it, right? So what makes you tired is that the Lyme disease like goes into your cells and it takes your mitochondria and eats it. Like that's
Mm.
it in a nutshell. That's why you get so tired because you're now not able to produce ATP, right?
Oh my God.
So that's why you're so fatigued all the time.
Yeah.
And so they're also destroying your red blood cells in the process.
Yeah.
So that can lead to anemia and so iron deficiency
Mm.
and right. So it's like this whole circular effect of what's going on in your body. So the first thing we did was we cut out some foods to sort of starve the Lyme, if you will,
Yeah.
including like iron supplements and things that would help boost my, you know, my mitochondria, my red.
Things you think are going to help your energy
Right.
levels, but you actually had to, yeah, reduce it. Okay.
So I withheld from taking those and, focused on healing my gut. And she did give me some herbs to take. And I mean, it's so basic. I mean, it was like oregano, garlic, some things that just are known to boost your immune system.
Yeah.
And so we did that. And then there were some things that help like combat bacteria, no antibiotics at this point, because at this point, like it's not going to help me, right? It's like we needed to draw them out from their hiding places and kill them. So she worked with me
Okay.
to do this. And I know this sounds all hokey pokey, but I'll get to like the actual like blood tests of it. So when we redid the blood tests
Yeah.
the first time, it was 6 months later, I had half the amount of Lyme markers that I had before. And then we did it 1 year later and it was pretty much zero.
Wow. Wow. These things are not hokey pokey. They say things, we know with nutrition research and food science, like things like garlic are antimicrobial, antibacterial, immune boosting. But it's like for somebody who doesn't have an issue, these things are just generally healthy. But when you have an issue and you take it as medicine, you consume these things as medicine, they really do turn into medicine in this specific scenario.
Yeah.
So that's really cool.
Yeah. And so during that time, I had actually gotten back into competitive running when we really like, because I started looking for answers very early on and I kept getting no, no, no. I had like ultrasounds done of like all my organs. They're like, your organs are fine. I'm like, well, then why is this happening to me? You know?
Yeah.
And so in any case, I had to adjust my training too, because basically the more aerobic I made my activities, that promotes your body to produce more aerobic things, which fed the Lyme. So when I switched my training,
Like the mitochondrial cells. Yeah.
exactly. So when I switched my training to more anaerobic, and so I cut my runs really short, but I did like a lot of high intensity stuff.
Mhm.
I was able to continue training and racing without the impact of, the fatigue that I would feel because of the Lyme.
Wow, that's fascinating. And so a year later, after working with this naturopath and making, having some dietary adjustments and training adjustments, is it that this is no longer an issue for you anymore? Is
No,
it still something dormant in your body
I don't think
all
so.
the time?
No, I don't think so.
It's not an issue anymore. It's gone.
Mm-mm. No, I, I don't nap during the day. So that's how I know that like it cannot be an issue because like
You're good. You
there's
feel
no way that I was going to make it through the day before without taking a nap. So,
wow, this is fascinating.
yeah.
And so other things like I don't know if you've been iron deficient since then, but like
Okay.
if you were would be safe to take iron again or something like that.
Yes, it is. And so like how iron deficient was I? My anemia was down to like my ferritin was somewhere in the 20s. And about
Yeah.
4 months ago, I had my iron level checked again. And I think I'm at like 96, which is a lifetime PR.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's very high for yeah, that's great. That's quite high. It's something to strive for.
right? That's where you want your PRs.
So, yes. Well, and I think this is a great reminder for people listening that we have to treat the root cause, So, yeah, like, frankly, if I hear fatigue, I'm like, with a runner, I'm like, probably need to check iron, need to eat more carbs. But the root cause was Lyme disease, in which eating more carbs and having more iron was actually going to make it worse at that time. You
Yeah,
have to treat that root cause. And discovering that can be very difficult. And Google can scare us sometimes by putting our symptoms in there. But also, I think it is the start to find a provider who's going to keep asking questions and running different tests until that root cause is figured out. And I think even just you coming on and sharing that story is really insightful. I just learned a ton that I did not know before. So thank you.
yeah, you're welcome.
How much time do you have? Because I realize we're at the top of the hour.
I'm fine. I don't have anything
Okay.
to rush off to. I'm good.
Okay. Because the other, aspect that I would love to chat with you about is, with nutrition, you have that diagnosis of Lyme disease and what you had to go through with nutrition there. As a lifetime athlete, you've had to learn how to fuel your body over time. And then also as a mother, you're now responsible for fueling people in your house, not
Yeah,
just you. And that can be challenging. And you have some food sensitivities in your household as well, and allergies that make things a little tricky. And then now as a master's athlete too, this is a big question. So I don't know where you want to start, but I just want to hear from you, some of the challenges you faced of raising a household that's mindful of everybody's nutrition needs, as well as any tactics. I guess these are two separate questions. Any tactics that are different now as a master's athlete with nutrition that compared to your younger self as an athlete, perhaps in college? Two different questions. Sorry about that. Big thing.
yeah. No, that's okay. I mean, so the first part is basically so in my house I have one child who's a paleo pescatarian. I have another child that has an allergy to nuts. And then, of course, trying to fuel myself. My husband's pretty much not picky. So that's good.
Thank goodness. One
So
person.
he is lactose intolerant. So, but I mean, he can, but he can take a lactate. So we're okay. But yeah, so it can be challenging to make sure that everyone's getting, what they need. But I just kind of, I don't know. I try to not overthink it too much. I mean, there's all the menu planners, the meal preps, the food planning, and it can make most people feel like a failure, right? But as I was saying
Mm.
to my family the other day, like, I never wanted to be a chef. Like, this has never been a life goal of mine, you know?
Yeah.
I don't want to be a baker, and I definitely don't want to be a chef. Like, those are not necessarily things that I enjoy. And I think it can kind of, and then, also when you have friends or, just, friends influence how we eat sometimes too. And so, some are like, don't eat fast food. That's just crap. But at the end of the day, our bodies, like a car, needs gasoline, right?
Mm.
Our bodies need calories. So if we're constantly making choices of this is good food, this is bad food, and then it inhibits our ability to just do what our body needs, which is consume calories, then we're not really helping ourselves. So I'm
Mhm.
wearing a shirt today that says eat well.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is that, you have to fuel your body with calories and that's going to look a little bit more like, I don't know, the half marathon course that I ran this past weekend that was very up downy, it was like up 300, down 300, up 300, down 300, right? And I mean, food is kind of that way too, in the sense that like, some things are maybe higher nutritional value because there's more vitamins and minerals and those are also important in fueling our body. But the majority of what we need is just calories. And how do we get
Mm.
that in sort of some way? I mean, we can make, you know, fast food choices that are healthier, right? Like it's not that like
Mhm.
all fast food is bad, and certainly eating fast food every day is not good either, right? So it's
Mhm.
really just being more fluid about it and more accepting of foods that we eat. So the other night we did some takeout and we got burgers. And when I do that, like I always try to get sort of like go for like the restaurants that sell like the grass-fed beef burger, right? Yeah, it's a little more money, but
Mhm.
it's a little more lean and generally it feels better on my stomach, right? Like it doesn't feel very acidic and greasy. And so we opted for the not grass-fed burger. And like so then it came time for like my evening snack and I was like, I'm actually just not even hungry right now. And it's probably just because like the fat intake was a little bit higher. And so I was more satiated and
Yeah.
right. And so I didn't eat it. And even my breakfast the next morning was slightly more delayed, but my body figured it out, right? Like it's not that that
Mhm.
burger was ever bad for me. It was just my body figured out what it needed after having the burger. Right. Like,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
we do need some fat in our diet. And if I am mostly eating healthy, that burger was probably the best thing I could have done for my body that day.
Yeah.
Right. So it's not just like this is good, this is bad, I can only eat good and like sort of penalizing ourselves, but it's also listening to our bodies. If we are more hungry, well, why am I more hungry? Did I have, a
Mm.
stressful day the other day where maybe my metabolic rate was higher because I was under stress or, there are lots of reasons for food. And then even sometimes our body preempts it, right? Like my body might know that I have a long run on Sunday. And it's like, well, I'm going to make her eat a little more because I don't want to be out at mile 10 and have her fall down on me because she doesn't have enough energy.
Mm.
So it's like, it's also knowing that the governor, your brain, also knows what's good for you.
Mhm. It sounds like with just again what you need for your health, two daughters with two different nutritional needs, a husband, he's, the easiest one, but still he's got something. But it sounds like what I'm hearing from you is you don't stress the little details. It's at the end of the day, are you consuming calories because that's the main thing your body needs, and is it within the parameters of what keeps you safe? Like, okay, so you're not going to eat nuts because it's an allergy, but what are the other foods that can give you calories? We're going to do that. And we might have the majority of the time, like with your burger example, we might have foods that we prefer to eat. But if at the end of the day, I don't want to make this too stressful on myself, so it is going to be something different, a quote, lower quality item or something I don't typically eat as often. But in that moment, like my body will adjust. That's a very intuitive approach too. And just focusing, it's not a bad decision. It wasn't wrong. This is what I had to do to get the calories in. That seems to be your underlying theme here. Like everybody's got their own needs. And so where are we getting our calories from? Good, check mark, job is done. We'll figure out the rest after.
Yeah, absolutely.
And yeah, and the time that I've known you, I think that's such a great approach. You could so easily get so stressed about trying to tailor to everybody's individual needs perfectly. And I think what you're also doing, and your daughters are a bit older, so you're teaching them how to take accountability for their own health choices too, which is really important for everybody, because at the end of the day, it's always your choice as to what you eat. So
yeah.
And we'll follow up with kind of that last question. Nutrition's a journey throughout our entire lives. I'm just curious, is there anything that sticks out to you though that might be different for you nutrition-wise now as an athlete, a high level competitive athlete compared to your college years? Or is it just a natural progression, that like, well, you've learned a lot along the way, or is there anything that's like, I do this now that I didn't do then, or I don't do this now that I used to do then? Anything that jumps out at you?
Yeah. I mean, more recently, like over the past year, I started struggling a little bit more with or like the macros that I was eating, I guess is what I should say. Because
Yeah.
what I found was that I started having like if I ate sugar or too many carbs, that my blood glucose would not respond correctly. And then I would, so too much insulin. And then I would need to eat more carbs, which I think ultimately was in a very short period of time, like in a month, I started to gain weight, which had never really happened. Like everything had always, like I said, I have a very fluid approach to it, and I've pretty much been the same, which I know I'm lucky. But I started focusing on reading some books from Stacy Sims. So what I did was I don't do it now, but I went into my Fitness Pal and started tracking what I was eating to see where I could make some improvements. And I know nutrition tracking is hard for some people, and I don't think that you have to do it every single day, but if you're struggling with something, I feel like it's probably the only way to get the answers that you're looking for, and then just let it go.
Yeah.
Right? Like you
need to learn from it.
Yes.
Oh, look, I'm not getting enough fiber. My protein's really low. Or
Exactly.
Yeah. So, use it as a tool to bring awareness and educate, not as something that you have to live by every single day.
Exactly. So what I learned during that time was that my protein was way too low. And also, I don't think I actually knew how much protein I needed as an athlete, right? So I need 140 grams of protein a day. That's a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And especially when you think about like chicken, like I don't know how many ounces, 6 ounces of chicken is like 22 grams or something like that. And it's like, that's not, I mean, how much chicken am I going to eat? Like,
yeah,
that's a lot, right? So I realized that supplementation, while I used to do it before, it wasn't necessarily regular. And I found a protein supplement that I like. And so this isn't a meal replacement. Usually I have breakfast and then I'll work out, and then I'll have a shake after I work out, which is high in protein. And so I have the protein powder, milk, cottage cheese, strawberries, and ice is my protein recipe. And it has, I think it's over 50 grams of protein. And I feel like my body recovers better. My weight has stabilized.
And it's like by adding that one thing in.
One thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. You made that one change.
And that really got me over, right? So because before that, I was probably getting about 90 grams of protein or whatever a day, right? Mm-hmm. But it wasn't enough. I needed 140. So I think it's about knowing how much you need based on, your goals.
Yeah. And if you don't mind me adding in my dietitian input for our audience, what you're expressing is very common symptoms of the metabolic and nutritional changes that happen as we age. So younger athletes, let's go back to a college age athlete, they actually could, somebody even your body size and activity level actually might be totally fine with 90 or 100 grams of protein a day and focusing on those carbohydrates.
Yeah.
As we age, especially as hormones begin to fluctuate, perimenopause, menopause, we're going to start seeing insulin respond a lot
Yeah.
differently.
It
And
does.
so the importance of, you might need slightly less carbohydrate, but as an athlete, I do not mean low carb.
Nope, me either.
Just means, yep,
Yeah.
it might be slightly less, or is pairing those carbs more specifically with the higher fiber carbs, the protein alongside it, and reaching a higher protein goal. I also really do want to stress, so this is important for, women in your age category who might be experiencing similar things to know we might need to make those adjustments. I also want the younger female athletes to know you don't have to do that yet. Because there are so many younger female athletes that are getting messaging of protein so important,
Right.
and watch the carbs. And actually, your 23-year-old body will probably be amazing with enough protein. I'm not trying to negate positive benefits of protein, but get enough protein, but focus on those carbs. And it's not until we age that our hormones and insulin responds differently.
Yeah.
And I'm just trying to make that differentiation for listeners, because so much we hear information of, watch the carbs, increase protein. And like you said, you never had to your whole life. You were fine.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's suddenly, during a certain age and stage in our life, things might change. And so I'm glad that you were able to figure that out for yourself. And I do think Dr. Sims is a great resource for female athletes in their 40s, 50s, 60s, and beyond to help understand that life stage is different than our 20s and different than our 30s. Yeah.
Yeah. And to that too, I'm not low carb. So my macros,
No, I don't think you were.
my macros are 40, 30, 30. So 40 carbs, 30 protein, 30 fat. And the fat, like I'm focused on omegas and, and also animal fats as well. But like, that's also important, especially because again, as you're aging, it impacts your skin and your tendons and ligaments as as you're aging. So for me, like what looks right for me is not necessarily what's necessary for a college athlete.
Yeah.
It's definitely important to know that there are changes through your body, but also if there's something going on in your body and you're not happy with the results that you're getting, it's important to figure out what you're actually doing and where you can make improvements so that you're happy.
Absolutely. Yeah, my life stage right now, I've had to focus specifically on, nutrition to help with sleep and recovery.
Mm-hmm.
And it's for every stage in our life, there's certain things that are going to bring more of a focus. And it's like in college, I could not sleep great and still perform pretty well, frankly. Maybe I should have focused on it a little more, but it's like, I can't delay my recovery from a post-workout. I feel it immediately if I don't get a good post-workout in. Like my post-workout has to be a meal for a fourth meal of my day. Otherwise I feel it and I can't do a workout the next day because I'm sore and I'm tired. And then my nutrition to help really support sleep, like watching what I eat before bed, because I will stay up and I'm already sleep deprived and those things affect me. I love coffee, but I'm like, my cutoff time is 1:00 because I cannot have an afternoon coffee because then I stay up and I'm so sleep deprived that'll make it even worse. Right. So those are little things like in my life that's like, when I was younger, I used to have an afternoon coffee and I was fine. And now I'm not. So we have different focuses, but we don't. I think maybe one message I want to share to people is like, we don't have to be doing all the nutrition things all the time. Like, what is the need during your life stage right now that's going to help you succeed, and focus on, those 1, 2, or 3 things. And so for you, focusing on that protein making and understanding your macros is really important for you right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that, Jen. This was so great to just dive into all things running, coaching, faster as a master, nutrition, and Lyme disease. That was so helpful to hear. And I really hope our audience will follow you on social media. I also want to share, you do such a good job at just writing about running in a way that just like, I follow your account because not only am I like impressed by you, but it gets me passionate about the sport again. And you sharing stories about all the little details of your races and your training. It's really great running writing.
I
So
appreciate
if you enjoy running,
that.
you'll learn a lot by following, and you've got, some blog articles, a website, Instagram, Facebook. So I would encourage people who love the sport of running and want to be motivated to go ahead and follow you.
Well, it was great talking with you today. I appreciate you having me on your podcast.
Thank you.
Well, everybody, thanks for listening. I really hope you enjoyed that episode. And if you did, if you are a true fan of female athlete nutrition, then I would love if you could support our podcast by spreading the word. Share a review on your listening channel, give us 5 stars. It really helps get the word out and get the show more views to positively impact others. Also, you can support the podcast by joining our Patreon. Head to patreon.com/femaleathletenutrition to consider a donation, or even better, join our membership where you get extra monthly content and perks. We don't want you to simply listen alone. We want you to be a part of a community and a movement of fierce, fit, and fueled female athletes. So patreon.com/femaleathletenutrition is where you can do exactly that, learn more, and join. A huge thanks to our affiliates and partners as well. Once again, Prevenix, Inside Tracker, or Gain, Practice Better, Jenn and Carrie. Please go check them out, and their links in the show notes where you can get deals and discounts. Last, be sure that you do more than just listen. If you need help with fueling, it's time to take action. Head to my website to learn more. You can either book a free call with me to learn more about our coaching programs and how we can work directly with you, whether it's the fast track or otherwise. Or you can take our online self-study course, Female Athlete Nutrition. You can literally sign up and gain access right now. You can explore our downloadable products, including the Red S Recovery Guide, High Iron Fueling Guide. Or if you are a coach of a team, check out our brand new Coaches Toolkit for teams. You can also just learn more. We have a blog, a Red S quiz to see if Red S is affecting you. If you need help, I want you to get help fast. Too many girls and athletes struggle with nutrition, but you don't have to any longer. You can rise up with the power of nutrition, take action today in any of these avenues, and become fierce, fit, and fueled. Links in the show notes, and we'll see you next time.